Hello, everybody. My name is Rodgon. I am an illustrator. I'm an artist, a designer. Um, I draw for a living. And today we are going to be drawing together. As you can see, my hands are full of ink because I stayed up till really late drawing heads over here on TikTok. This video will be on YouTube, probably as a sped up version of, the illustrations that we did. Mostly because I don't feel like posting what I talked about yesterday online. So, sometimes I get sad and I talk, and that those conversations are strictly between me and the people from the chat that night. So, if you want to hear my ramblings and my rants, come join us at night whenever I jump on. Okay, yeah, yesterday we talked about faces a lot. So we talked about heads, we talked about composition, spacing, and how to make it work in various different ways. We talked about just the basic structures and some basic techniques that will help you be able to map out your things without any issues, like because you'll learn the placement of things. So you'll be able to draw in anime, you'll be able to draw in cartoon form, you'll be able to draw in comic book form, anything like that. But unfortunately, that stream is not going to be on YouTube. So I'm going to have to just remake that information in some way or another. Texas, Jesus Christ is the only way. The only way to what? These profiles look amazing. The expressions, you're so talented. Well, I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the compliments. We are this close to finishing the sketchbook. We are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 days away from finishing the sketchbook if we do one page in every stream. So, what should our theme be today? What are my other pages? Well, we talked about perspective and we talked about turnarounds and the importance of subdivisions. And we talked about what level of detail you might be in. In this one, we talked about animals and features and tails and eyes and feet and ears and beaks and mouths and snouts. In this one, we talked about legs and we had an axolotl and we drew axolotl. To show how you can start mapping out your characters. We go about a lot of things most of the time in every stream. So I like to answer things with doodles. So we went in this one it was more about just talking about my life a little bit and how features change, the look of people and what tools to use and how to use shading and how to use lighting and how to use perspective with your lighting. And this one we were talking about posing, so we talked about posing and we just posed the character as I explained to you guys what you guys are seeing. So all these streams, most of these, the good ones are at least, they are on YouTube. So honestly, there's a bunch of cool knowledge and resources for you to actually access if you actually want to. No one's going to force you to, no one's going to beg you to, but the information is there. There's knowledge there that's free and easily accessible for us to learn. Thanks to people like me. Alright, so we have our pen. Theme. We have a theme. Someone mentioned a theme. Okay. Theme. Characters and how to give them personalities. Perfect. Seeing as I will be in a competition with the Pencilism Studios people, maybe I think it's on the 25th of this month, of next month. I get to compete against 2 other character designers again. The first time around, it was against the awesome Derek Loffman and the incredibly talented Animated Live from Instagram. It was us 3 going up against each other live, and it ended up in a tie. We each won 1. This time around, I don't know who I'm competing against. So, but it's not going to be my first go around competitions either. Um, I I like competition. I like I like challenging myself. So, I have dedicated most of my life to being good enough at whatever I do to be competitive at it. Recently, that has been turning into pool, billiards, 9 ball, 8 ball. I have gotten to the point in 1 year, just applying the same concepts that I applied to my drawing and learning how to draw. I went from not really knowing like anything except like what you normally do at bars and like play with your friends to being a national ranked player with my team and everything. But still, I got to go to nationals. And in 1 year, I improved a drastic amount to the point where people think that I was like sandbagging at the beginning of the season, which I love. Like when you get to the point where you have buddies that have been playing for like 20 years, 15 years, and you start surpassing them within a year of playing, well, people are going to start getting like, what's going on here? Why is he so good? Was he that good at the beginning? Arrgh. And I love that feeling. I love that feeling of having people doubt your skills because they're so good. Not that I'm like an amazing pool player, but I'm a very decent pool player now. And I love this part. Okay, so characters, right? How do we make our characters look more dynamic? How do we make our characters look more alive? Uh, the very thing that we normally do at first, whenever we're drawing characters, that's going to stop us from having characters that are purposeful and like alive, is to draw everything flat. So essentially, when you set your horizon strictly at the horizon line, all your drawings are going to be pretty flat. And even if you don't even have a horizon line, maybe you just draw most of your characters like this. When you draw your characters like this, simple hands, I'm going to tell you why you lose so much detail. So even though it looks proportionally right for the head that it has, this has a bunch of issues. First of all, there's no horizon line. So, because technically, if we were looking at this as a horizon line, this would be the absolute horizon. So these things would be curving up, right? Like this as a shape would be curving up because that's the horizon line. So that's already off because it's not following the perspective that we are giving it. Now, the other thing is that there's literally no overlapping sections. So I did a couple just from like actual normal sketching, but overlapping lines, for example, here on the t-shirt, are what start giving your character a sense of motion. Even if it overlaps like this, the arm is behind. If it overlaps like this, the arm is forward. So you start seeing little tiny amounts of movement by just overlapping lines. Okay? Next, the sleeves. You got to remember that these, like any sleeve, goes around your arm, right? It doesn't go flat, ever. It's always going to be circular or going around your arm. And also with the chest and everything, having no indication of any sort of, if you have a belly, you should draw a little belly line. If you have like a very strong chest, give yourself a little indentation here. having an indication of a harder surface or a squishy surface below your clothing is very important to create depth. So in order to avoid just drawing things like this, it's very simple if you understand the concept of moving things in space, right? So if you understand the concept of taking a cylinder, right? Imagine that's a cylinder. It's going around, front and back, front and back, front and back. If we take that and we start rotating it, you're going to start seeing different angles, right? So if you rotate it and it's completely flat, you can't really distinguish that besides just from the subdivision lines that it would be a circular shape. So the same thing you got to do with your legs and everything. So instead of having your legs flat like this, we're going to have our legs like this. Okay? So how is that going to look like? So it's going to go from having your legs be drawn flat to your legs being drawn not flat. And what's going on here, right? So at the bottom of this cylinder, I'm going to mark out my foot shape. So I'm going to mark out my foot shape, and then I just give it volume to give it a foot. But I'm taking into consideration the perspective of how it goes into my ankle. In this case, it's mostly like pants, so it's just a big cylinder that goes down. Yeah, it might have little folds and stuff like that later on, but for now, this is the basic element that we're concerned about, and finding out that perspective. Okay, so all we did is we took the horizon line from here and we moved it up here. So now this looks like it's sitting in perspective as opposed to not sitting on anything. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh man, I forgot to scroll down and update this. Okay. The foot is basically a cylinder that you are seeing from the bottom. Yeah, essentially that is what's going on. So whenever you are linking your character, you got to think the same thing with the torso. But it's a very interesting thing when it comes down to the torso, because depending on where you have your horizon line, see if your horizon line is there for those foot, it's going to change the moment you go into your body. So let's do an actual character, and we'll walk it through it. So we're going to set our horizon line at first. Right? We're going to establish our scene, since we're going to create a full body character. Let's make the ground that he's going to be standing on. I'm going to set my horizon. I'm going to just make some lines, and I'm going to give my character a little area that he can stand in perspective. Okay? So my character is going to be standing right here. So that means that my feet are going to be within this plane. So I can draw how my feet are going to look. The bottom of my feet, like how it's touching the ground. And I know that my ankle is going to be towards the backside of this shape. Now I can build this shape up if I wanted to, and create the basic elements for my foot. in various different ways. You can create it through volume by just creating circles. You can build it up like a box or any other shape, like a little triangle or whatever. You can even think about it as, multiple shapes. But that's one stepping stone that you can take. So you can take more geometric approach, or you can take more of a just finding the shape approach by just creating lines and stuff. Creating volume until you find it. Remember, this is just your sketch. You would go in then after that and clean it up into whatever design you want. But at first, finding the shapes is very important. And the ground. Now from there, as you move up, we establish that our legs are going to be around here, right? So if this is the perspective, let's just draw the bottom or our hip bone right here. You would see a tiny bit of the top of the hip bone, and it would go down towards our legs. And the perspective would be as such. Right? It starts adjusting. It starts getting closer to a midground the closer it gets to the horizon line. And these are curved, right? The entries to your legs is curved. It's not flat. So we have to account for that too. That's what makes it a little bit more difficult. In this case, I'm just segmenting the leg into one big tube. But normally about here, you'd have the intersection with your thigh, and then your calf would connect to the back of your thigh, and then you'd create a leg. But for just simplicity's purposes right now, and since we're teaching more perspective than the actual anatomy, we're going to focus on just creating a leg like this. Do you take drawing requests? It depends on what you mean by drawing request. I don't really do commissions anymore. Cheers. But Fresh Athlete, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing lives. Yeah, if you guys just give me a second, let me take some coffee because it's still early in the morning for me. Like I just woke up like 30 minutes ago. Something fun. Carry Post-its around. There's always a use for Post-its. I carry them around because I take notes about the things that I'm gonna be doing later on. Even dimensions for we're gonna set up like a little stream box too. I'm gonna build one. But yeah, even little tiny things like this, ideas that help me out later on. So it's good to have Post-its around. Honestly, it's one of the coolest little things that I like to carry around with me. Okay, so let's go up. Once we hit the horizon line, this is when everything's gonna even out. So everything here is going to be completely flat. So we have to try to avoid anything that's going to have a lot of dimension there. So normally when I'm setting up my basic character designs in my brain, the horizon line is always at the belly button. Because that's halfway. That way that means that the legs are going to be going in one direction, like horizon line. Legs are going to, if we're seeing this from a profile, I guess, you're going to end up with something more akin of this type of posing. Simply because you're looking at something from a camera angle that's right here. So, when you're looking at something, it's going to look a little bit from underneath, from the top, but you're going to be looking at the legs from an upward angle. So it creates this curve to your body. Okay? The upward here, the rib cage, you're going to see a little on the underside of the rib cage. So if we have our rib cage, we would see a little bit more of the underneath part. And on the head, you would probably start seeing a little bit more of underneath the head, depending on how you're posing it, of course, but so maybe you'd see a tiny bit of that. Okay. The rib cage goes up onto our collarbone. Our collarbone is going to determine where our shoulders go. I like to represent it like this now. Like it's evolving still, but I like to think of it as a little heart as a shape. That's essentially what I'm thinking about. Connecting from the middle point and going around to a collarbone. For some reason, that just makes sense to me. Then from here, we can connect the outside of our rib cage to the outside of our hips. From the bottom of our rib cage to where our crotch would be, that's our abs. And then you start building the rest of the face. So a lot of character design is not necessarily about coming up with a really cool style. It's understanding the concept of being able to take even a simple structure like this and creating like 16, 20 different styles from it. But if you don't have a base structure to be able to work off, it's going to be really hard to even achieve those sorts of jobs. Okay? So when you're drawing just regular without a horizon line, or when you're not like, worrying about like, oh, well, I need to like make sure that the stroke. No, whenever we're drawing, we normally don't think like that. We're normally just drawing, right? We just start with like lines and stuff like that, and then we start drawing from there. Whenever you're thinking like that, whenever you have figured out the shape that you want, at that point, that's when you should come up with your grid. And then just ground the character into a perspective. Okay? And regardless of what you do with that now, at least now you have a really quick understanding of what's looking up and what's looking down. You can also start moving things into the distance easier because you know that it's going to be grounded. Right? It's just, everything's just a matter of understanding what you're drawing. It's going to have a bobblehead. Like one of those dead mouse like ears. Panda lady, DJ time. So, little tiny things like that. And also little tiny minuscule things like when you're placing your feet, right? If you do have your feet together, maybe don't draw both feet the same. Like draw one foot slightly in a different direction. Little overlaps create tension and create story. Okay, adding little details like clothing seams or like ripped little holes, all little things that would happen to a person in real life are elements that if you add it to an actual character, they're gonna give them like personality. It's just a matter of being creative. So let's say we have a basic character, just a basic face. And our character here, let's call him Stan. Stan wants to stand out. Stan wants to be memorable. So how does Stan go from being average average to being distinguishable? Okay, so we have Stan. Stan is your average dude. He doesn't really have any distinguishing features for him. So how do we make Stan look amazing? And how do we make him stand out from everybody? Well, Stan has a couple options. If you have seen the show Cobra Kai, which I highly recommend, there's a kid there called Hawk. He reinvents himself by giving himself a mohawk and getting tattoos and stuff like that. And it doesn't fall far away from that. So one big element that you can do to give your character a little bit more life is to give him an interesting haircut. That's why anime characters always have such weird haircuts. Now, you think the hair from Dragon Ball is normal, or the stuff from One Piece? No, it's meant to get attention. It's meant to call out a certain feature to make them a little bit more, interesting. Now, the next thing you can do, so hair is one of them. Give them accessories. So an earring, a piercing, or anything like that will help your character look a little bit better. Real life accessories, things that you would wear. Try to make it into a thing where you can hide as much stuff that you like, and then just Easter eggs for yourself. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this and you guys are learning anything, you know what to do. Try to hit this guy right here. This guy's a little jerk. He told me last night that you couldn't eat pancakes better than his grandma. So you guys gotta hit him and drown him in little hearts. Yeah. Bam. There you go. So while you guys try to drown him in little hearts, he'll continue. The first thing that we got to do is the hair. Then we got to add accessories if you want to really make your character stand out. The next thing could be scars. Scars are a very, very strong indicator that makes a character look very interesting. A scar can change a whole character's persona. Now he kind of looks like a juggalo, but hey, makeup. There you go. You can make it into makeup as well. He will. Oh no, Stan! Now you look like the demon from from Death Note. Uruk. The next thing you can do is give him a very distinguishing eye. Right? Make him stand out in some way or another, just by changing an element in it. And all these elements could be any of these. Any single, doesn't have to be all three of them. Any individual one of them is going to give your character's faces a lot more appeal. So you don't have to do all three of them. Do two of them. Do one of them. But just make sure to add something to him that's going to make him look awesome. Another thing that we have to remember when we're doing character design and, keeping our shapes fresh is to make sure that you are playing with the range your character can do. So if your character is very bendy, very flexible, it's going to give you a lot of playroom to be able to do fun things, right? If your character is very flexy, you gotta learn to move that character in perspective as much as possible, so that all his movements don't come out looking flat. Now I'm just gonna do a couple of extreme anatomy poses to explain to you guys how I normally approach them. Okay, so let's say we have a dancer and she's going nutty with the rhythm, and she's just la 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 in a t-shirt. She's just dancing in a t-shirt in her house. So first we got to come up with a pose. We came up with a really quick, simple, not simple, but very interesting, weird, bendy pose. We're gonna make this happen. We're gonna make this work. Now, the next thing is to identify all the features that will affect the rest of the body. Okay? So that means any elements like bumps, in this case breasts, would be an element in there if I draw a woman. I gotta remember that it's gonna be looking in perspective. Since my legs are here, that means my hip bones are over here. That means my rib cage is here. That means my breasts are gonna be over there. This is gonna lead to my shoulder blades, into my arm, into what I assume is gonna be my hand right here, but we'll see. Yeah, we'll make it the hand. And in this case, the hand will be right there as well. But this time around, it's going to be covered with a sleeve from the long sleeve shirt that we're going to have. The head might be a little bit too big for this body, so I'm going to twist it around a little bit more, but I'm going to make it a little smaller. And then I'm going to start adding some detail for the body. So since we already have a couple structures that are going to be needed for a t-shirt, we can start with that. So I'm going to have the shirt be oversized, so it's going to wrap around her neck and go into her shoulder. So it's going to go around that because it's just going to be a really big shirt. All right, so it's not going to just fit around her neck. Then the next step that comes is my shoulders are up. So I'm going to identify my shoulders into my collarbone. In situations like this, the collarbone is very important because it provides you this direction for your ribcage, it provides the direction for your shoulders, and it just gives you a lot of information that is needed for you to be able to complete this pose. So the collarbone is very important to locate early. Okay, from here, she is twisting her body a lot, so that would create creases, especially if it's clothing. That would create right there. And then, since I'm going to have a long sleeve t-shirt, I'm going to draw the end of the sleeve and then all the bunching up that happens because the sleeve is falling and sliding down. Kind of looks like someone's bowling. We can totally make this person bowling. After that, we're going to go into our arm. I don't want to have a super big buff arm, so I'm going to adjust it so it looks right. or a little bit better at least. The lines are the sketch is kind of wonky at first, so it's gonna be hard to get like a super like standard pose, but that's not what we wanted. So my potato chip hand, my Pringles hand. I have given examples of how to draw the Pringles hand in many occasions. So if you have not seen that method, please just go back to my YouTube channel and just look around until you find it. Like I've told you guys before, I like to draw the digits of my fingers first because that allows me, the ability to push that into perspective a little bit better. And for placement, of course. The fingers bending down, the thumb. All right, so we have one hand. Then this side, the hip is coming out this way, but it's coming down. So I'm gonna just quickly mark the perspective lines so that I know exactly how that's going. I'll bring this out a little bit more. And I'm gonna make the t-shirt wrap around and have a little bit of an overlap. From here, it would go on to where the peak of the breast is, and then they would normally fall down due to gravity. Unless it's wet, it would not hug the body as much as you think. And then it was just gonna fall into the other side of the t-shirt that's wrapping around her. Right, so just drape. If she did have like anything that stands out, like little nipples or something like that, that's what it would stretch out the fabric right there. If the material is thin enough, and if that's actually something that's happening, you don't just add stuff like that. That just makes your drawings just erotic for no reason, right? So if you have the need to draw that, then draw it, and then it's gonna create that element. If you don't, then just don't. Like there's no reason to sexualize something more than if you already need it. Try to find a different way to make your character stand out. If it's not just because it's sexy, try to give it a different personality. Try to think outside the box a little bit. The legs, we explained legs in thorough detail a couple days ago. So we explained legs in thorough detail. So make sure to go see this one if this does not make sense. This one is on YouTube already. So with legs, we have our teardrop into our teardrop shape that we learned how to draw. The overlapping tendon into our back thigh bone. We have our calf that wraps around the shape of our bottom foot, right? It wraps around the calf, going into our toe, into our foot, into our heel that's touching the ground, and our foot going forward at an angle. Cool. Other leg. We're going to find the other side of the hip bone by creating the little butterfly into the underwear line, right? We figure out one side, and then we figure out the other side, because it's the back. So 1, 2, and then I can draw my leg from there. The backside of your leg, besides from your the connection to your butt, it's actually relatively flat into your kneecap, into the calf muscle that wraps around the bottom shape again, into your ankle, into a foot very heavily in perspective, so it's a lot smaller, And I drew the foot the other way. The toes go on the inside. So the toes are always going to make that front shape. The toe always goes inside the body. So if this is the outside leg, the toe needs to be inside. So therefore the bigger shape needs to be in the inside. That's simple. Boop. The connection with the calf, this little tendon that goes onto your kneecap, it's still there. And then that's where the connection happens with your leg. Gonna give a little shadow here just to push that shape back. And then we're gonna go on to the head. And then we'll figure out. So you have been noticing I'm working from the front back. So whatever element is the furthest forward, I draw that first. And then I start pushing back because that way I don't have to worry about what's gonna cover what. I just already know it because I already drew it. Alright, so let's draw the face. And let's try to draw a face of a dancer. If they have any sort of faces at all. Like, I can't imagine like a face that looks strictly like a dancer. And that's it. Unless you're like a ballerina. Hair always pulls to wherever the tension of the hair is going to be. So in this case, since she has a bun, all the hair is getting pulled towards this spot right here. Boom. So all the hair flows back, regardless of... If she had two buns, then the hair would be split, whichever hair goes to whichever side. The face. So this is my eyebrow line, which means that this is the middle part of my eye. This is the divot for my forehead and my cheekbone into my cheekbone. So now we get to decide what kind of expressions, what kind of look we want. The first thing I like to draw is my nose bridge because it covers up parts of the rest of the face. So I draw my nose bridge into my eyebrows. I don't like drawing the eyebrows exactly the same. Normally it's one up, one down for me because that's just the way that I like drawing them. I find that that's what gives the most personality, and it gives you like a snickering look, like, what's up? So I like to draw them like that. And then my eyes, it at this point can be any style that I feel like it. I'm just going to keep it simple for right now because we're thinking about posing. We're not talking about anything else. And then the mouth, the position from the mouth here was a very difficult thing for me to understand. Okay, it was incredibly hard for me to understand how far up and how far down to draw the face because I didn't understand the concept of just following my mouth. Follow your skull and you'll find the solution. If you really quickly follow your cheekbone and you draw a quick skull, now you know where your teeth are. So if you know where your teeth are, you know your lips are over your teeth. So, ta-da! I find it best to draw super tiny and then draw it bigger. Yeah, drawing small is actually a very, very, very fun thing to do. In this case, her arm is going to be moving up. So that means her collarbone is up. She's going to be reaching up here. And it's going to be like the long sleeve shirt is just going to be draping. Maybe she's just reaching for something up here. We'll draw a finger going for something. On top of a fridge. And the fridge has to match the same perspective as that. As the foot. Right? Because we're mapping everything in perspective. I mean, this is really looking kind of static. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you guys how I would go in and fix things with pen. And I'm going to show you guys the power of the Post-its. So if you ever make a mistake and you're drawing with pen, you can just do this. Cover it up. And then fix your mistake. Or see what your correction could have been. I think in my case right here, in this one especially, is the fact that the rib cage is so close to the body that it didn't give enough space for either the rib cage or the thigh to stand out. So we're keeping the same proportions, by the way. I'm just going to change the posing. Same exact measurements. Yeah, let's change the arms. Let's actually like make the arms proportionate. Collarbone into the shoulders, collarbone into the shoulders, like a little heart, remember? The breasts. And then hip bone as into the other hip bone that would be on the other side. I'm going to follow those same sketch lines. I'm just going to de-exaggerate a little bit of the distance that we had. Potato chip hand into pointing forward. Right. If your hand is pointing with your hand up, with your wrist up, means that this muscle is going to be up. If you point your wrist down, then this muscle is going to be up. So since we're pointing down, that bottom muscle is going to be activated. I haven't drawn a Panda Scout in a while. Yeah, I'll draw that today. Actually, no, today I gotta finish filming. I gotta finish filming the 21 draw stuff. That's what my goal is today. You guys are gonna be so like excited when you. Oh man, when you guys see what I'm gonna be doing for that course, it's gonna like be super cool. Shoulder number 2 is right here, so we can figure out the arm. I don't want to stick it out so far out, so I'm gonna have a slightly more relaxed pose going this way. Man, the head's still off, huh? Is that the angle? No, I think it's just too big. Scrap. Practice can only make you better. So even if it takes a couple tries, like, doesn't matter. I always like to go over the other stuff already. And I will often find myself drawing the same thing over and over and over again, just to make sure that it's cemented in my brain. Sometimes even after it's already been like figured out and I already know exactly what I want to do with it, I'll still redraw it just to get that understanding of that shape in my brain, right? I am a person that works off habit, and I'm a person that works off repetition and muscle memory. So change the side. Never make a character look completely in a profile shot if you can avoid it. So even if you change it slightly, it's going to increase the appeal. So instead of basic profile, show maybe a little bit of the underside because you're changing, rotating it a little bit to the left. So you'd see a tiny bit of that underside. I still want to have a big t-shirt, so I'm still going to wrap it around his shirt. But I'm going to add a little motion to it. So I'm going to shift it to the side, make it look like it's flowing. And I'm going to follow that same flow with her hair as well. Just to give it a sense of motion. That looks so good. How long have you been practicing? Well, I've been practicing for like over 20 years. So I do this professionally. So people come to me with like requests for marketing assets, for clothing assets, stuff like that. So I've had a long career and I've done a little bit of everything when it comes down to art. So yeah, the thing that I like the most though is just illustration and teaching. That is like my favorite thing about like that I do in art. I'll push this hand really far up. This is another way that I like to break down hands, especially when I need to push them in perspective a lot. I create a circular palm to my wrist that's more of an oval. And then from there, I do the same thing that I do with my digits. I figure out my shoulders and I start figuring out the midground. And then it's all about just understanding the overlapping shapes to create that depth. So your bicep goes in between the front side of your forearm, and that's what creates that little pocket and the little muscles. In this case, the hand is broken up into 1 digit, 2 digits, 1 digit, and the thumb. So the one thing that you got to keep in mind whenever you're drawing hands too is that the knuckle, the base knuckle for our hands, is inside of our hand. That's what creates these little bumps. That knuckle is not at the edge of the finger. It's not at the top of the finger, like it's not here. It's inside of the hand, and it just protrudes. Right? It just sticks out from the hand. So if you think of your hand like this, let me draw it on. So if you think of your hand as ending right there, because that's where your hand ends, your palm, boom, boom, your knuckle is inside of that. So all that happens is that it rotates and it extrudes, right? So whenever you're drawing a hand, draw the knuckles inside your hand shape. That way, whatever measurement you have from there to your first finger, that's going to be the exact same distance as the next two. The measurement from here, it's not from here, it's not from the edge. If you measure it from the edge, your fingers are always going to be really long. From the knuckle inside to the first digit is the same distance as the next two together. From this to the middle digit is going to be the same distance as the next two together. And that's always a very consistent thing. Okay, your thumb is about halfway up your palm, and then it has your knuckle into a bigger knuckle connected by a little trapezoid, little like, like spread out cone into your digit. There's a little bit of webbing that goes between your index finger and your thumb, giving you a little bit of depth right there, creating this little pocket. And from there, your wrist connects to your hand. So let's take those elements into consideration. And whenever we're drawing our hand up here, I'm going to draw my knuckles inside the hand. I'm going to split this into two, this whole thing into two. This part's going to be my first digit. And this part's going to be my next two digits. Since I don't have a lot of movement, I don't have like a lot of movement in my last two digits. It's very little. So I normally like to keep it as one element unless I really need to create that bend for some reason. Doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. But that's how I would approach it. And then the t-shirt part gets draped over this, around this. Right? Even further into perspective. But yeah, that's what would happen in that case. Stockings, since you already have your sketch lines in perspective, those become really easy, right? that just becomes like the simplest thing in the world. Then you can add little things. I like to give my stockings kitty paws. I saw those on a woman once. And I thought that was the cutest thing in the world. Giving your characters a little bit of grounding through shadows also helps. Let's see. We have maybe space for one more thing to talk about. But before I need you guys to hit this guy again because he's being a jerk. You suck at drawing. Hit him. Bam. He's being a jerk again. Don't let him do that. Is there a specific reason why you use that big pen? Yeah, because I find pencils to be very messy. And big pens are just cheap. They sketch actually really nicely. They don't gunk up. So you can get really thin lines or you can get really bold lines. Right? So it's thin, so I don't have to like struggle with grabbing a big like marker or like. So I have developed a very good feel for it. It's also making it so I don't have to press too hard, right? I have a very bad issue, especially with like mechanical pencils, for example, where I press so stupidly hard that I break the mechanical pencil. I end up breaking the mechanical pencils, and then, it just like ruins the experience for me because I want to keep drawing, but I can't. Unless I like change the lead out, and then it just becomes a hassle. I have never broken a pen. It's a lot harder to draw with pen because you have no room for mistakes unless you just want to put post-its all over your art. But it's also very satisfying to know that you can do that without the use of a pen, without the use of erasers. Like, to be able to create anything that's decent without the use of an eraser is, in my opinion, it's a feat. Well, that's a horrible perspective, but whatever. Messy, yes. I love my artwork being messy. I love it. It's just, honestly, it's one of the, I am proud of my art being messy. I have followed in the steps of people like Humberto Herrera, Humberto Ramos. Oh God, Roberto Herrera? Is it Roberto Herrera? Um, and other people like that that just mess very, very, very messily sketch, and then they just, but their artwork when it's cleaned up, it's like stupidly clean. Like, if you guys saw any of my finished artwork, which you guys can see if you guys go to rodgon.com, it's a lot of very finished, very detailed work. And it's just, it drives me nuts because I like this sort of drawing much, much better than I ever have done like any sort of finished like sketches. For some reason, my brain just works like this much more. So when you're thinking of your bodies in the perspective, think about these three sections, right? Because that's essentially what's going on with this. So the top section, which is going to be your upper body, is going to be more in a upward horizon perspective. So if this is your horizon, one of them, the upper part, you're going to be seeing a little bit of the underside. It's going to be more in this layout. The legs, you're going to see a little bit more of the bottom, of the top, as you can see clearly. And then in the midsection, it's going to be relatively flat, so you're not going to really see much the top or the bottom. And doing that sort of breakdown is going to help you have more interesting poses for your characters, especially if you're just doing character design. So that is my suggestion for today. Like always, we will be drawing a cute animal to say goodbye to our stream. So this time, you guys get to choose a drink and an animal. Actually, I'll choose the animal. You guys choose the drink. So yesterday, you guys chose a martini panda. So we drew a martini panda, and then before that, we drew a Starbucks taper, and then we drew a little sad platypus. So we are going, what? A smoothie. A smoothie. Okay, we're gonna draw a smoothie. A boba tea. Well, no, we have already had the first person to say it was a smoothie, I believe. What's my YouTube? Please don't say it's on your bio. It's Rodgon the artist. It's the name. It's the same name that I have, so you can find that through there. Let's see. So we're gonna draw a smoothie. A big smoothie cup. And then we're gonna draw. I'm gonna go to my book of animals that I have over here, and I'm gonna draw whatever comes up first. All right, let's open this up. And whatever we see first, we're going to draw that. No, I don't want it to be a gopher. Okay, Penguin? Penguin? Smoothie, penguin? Nah, koala. I'm going to do a koala. I'm gonna do a koala. I don't know why. I just feel like drawing a koala right now. So I'm going to kind of draw them hidden in the back because their ears are so big that they're going to incorporate most of the drawing anyways. He's going to be hugging the smoothie. They have really big noses that cover most of their face. And a little straw. He's gonna be. I'm just gonna be holding it right now. Okay. So you'd be surprised how far you can get with just a simple jelly bean shape. Like, the amount of stuff that you can create with just the jelly bean shape is insane. I highly recommend that you guys start trying to figure out perspective much more in your drawings. It's going to be what brings you to a professional level if you're not quite there yet. And it's going to give you so much confidence because you're going to be able to create like things that you had no idea you could. So I highly suggest that if you are not a person that, understands, and be honest with yourself too. Like, if you don't understand certain concepts of illustration, be it lighting or storytelling, or in this case, perspective or anatomy or anything like that. If you ever feel like you're not really understanding something, take the time to figure it out. There's enough resources out there for you to figure out absolutely any scenario. Okay? How do you make something look like a smoothie? They normally just come in a cup. Okay. Choo-choo. Smoothie King. There you go. There you go. So, with the little smoothie koala being completed, that is going to mark the end of our stream today. Thank you all so much for staying tight, keeping me company, and learning from me today. If you guys are interested in supporting what I do, all I actually, from any single one of you guys, is to just go follow the resources that I provide. I have an Instagram, and I have a YouTube, and I have a TikTok. So, whichever one of those you are interested in and you want to follow, go for it. That's going to be it. I love you guys. I hope you guys learned a lot. Thank you all so much. Little happy koala is going to drink his smoothie now, and I'm going to go get myself some breakfast because I have not eaten yet. I will see you guys soon for another stream. And till then, stay doodly, my friends. And I will see you guys in the next video. Laters.